inferiorly down out of the brain, and when we look at the sheep, it comes posteriorly. It will go along their back, right? It comes out straight back. But you can see this dura mater. This is the meninges outside, so it's kind of see-through, but it's got like that milky color to it. And you can see it covering, here's the two cerebral hemispheres. This is where the cerebellum is right here. You can see it in the human brain, a little bit under the brain there. But in the sheep, it's a little bit more in the back. And then the brainstem coming down off of there. Okay, this would be the brainstem. Cerebellum is right here. You can see this is going to be the fissure between the two hemispheres. We call that the longitudinal fissure, but we'll see that once we get in. You can kind of make out the gyri of the brain. And then the little darker grooves between them are the sulci, or sulcus. This area, you see the dura mater, it kind of gets thicker right here. That's going to be where our dural venous sinuses are located. What's inside the dural venous sinus?
Blood.
Blood. Okay. That's where the two layers of the dura separate into the periosteal and the meningeal layer. We have blood going through there. This one is called the superior sagittal sinus. I made a little area here. I thought I did. Oh yeah, for meninges. So you can see, I put dura, arachnoid, and pia. You can't really see the arachnoid matter on here. It's really like adhering to the inside of the dura, and you don't really see it. You just got to kind of know it's there. And then the pia matter, also, you'll just see that's right on the surface of the brain itself, that shiny surface. And you can also see it thickened here between the cerebellum and the cerebral hemispheres. So what happens is it separates there too, and that's where we have our transverse sinuses. So blood will flow back here, you know, remember, from the arachnoid villi, draining the CSF and any blood from the brain in there. And then it joins with these transverse one, and then it comes around down to the, where? Where's it going to leave the brain? Through what foramen? Jugular, yeah, the jugular. Jugular veins will come down from here. So it flows this way and then around both sides and around and down. Now, we also recall these terms. We brought them up in lecture. You see falx cerebri and tentorum cerebelli. I'll show those to you in a moment. But we see the continuation of the meningeal layer of the dura goes down between the two hemispheres. And it kind of is like a little separation. It's not that big in the sheep. I'm almost positive it's much bigger in the human and much more evident. It's that separation between the two hemispheres, a little extension of the dura. And then the one that extends down between the cerebellum and the cerebral hemisphere is called the tentorum cerebelli. We'll be able to see that one real clear. So what we're going to do is we want to remove the dura mater here. And I'm going to try to preserve it in a way that we can see those sinuses a little bit. So what we want to do... Oh, let me flip this over. We can see some structures here before I remove this. When we look at the ventral, or in this case, the inferior surface of the brain, we see these two little things right here. Okay, this is the frontal lobe, and underneath it, this is a cranial nerve. Any idea what that one might be?
Olfactory.
Good, that's cranial nerve 1, olfactory. They're going to be right going down through that ethmoid bone and right into the nasal cavity. Little nerve endings will come off of this into the nasal cavity. We call these olfactory bulbs, and in the human we can see they would be right here and then they continue back as cranial nerve 1. They're a lot bigger in the sheep than they are in the human. You'll see that in most wild animals. It's going to be much bigger. They rely on that sense of smell much more. There's many more nerve endings there. With humans, it's become quite small. You know, evolutionarily speaking, it's shrunken over time. There's a little open in the dura mater there. Then we see these. What cranial nerve do you think those are?
Optic.
Good. Those are optic. Those are going to continue to the eyes. And we'll see they're going to come back and they're actually going to cross right here. When I remove that dura, you'll see the cross a little better. And we want to be careful. We don't just want to rip off the dura mater because it'll rip those right off. We'll try to preserve those. We call that the optic chiasm. I'll show you that in a little bit. And then they cross into the optic tracts. Optic tracts with a T. They're going to go back down into the brain tissue, and then where would they end up? What part of the brain? Occipital lobe. I mean, we're not going to go in that deeply and be able to follow it and see it, but we know that it ends up in the occipital lobe. Right here in the middle, we have, this is what is going to be the pituitary gland right here. So it's hanging from an area of brain just above it, the hypothalamus. It's virtually impossible to remove the dura mater without the pituitary falling off. I haven't been able to do it as of yet. So that's okay. We'll just look at the spot. You'll be able to see the spot where it attaches. We call that the infundibulum, where it attaches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with it where it's already opened here, and some of them may already be ripped a little bit. And I can cut through this dura. Just be careful when you're going in. I'm lifting up the dura away from the brain. I don't just want to jam my scissor in there and ruin the tissue. But I'm going to bring it this way, and I'm going to cut across the top of the brain here. And slippery little guy. I'm going to get in there, and you may even want to use, you can use the blunt end there just to make sure you're not doing too much damage. But I promise I'll be careful. Okay, and I'm going to cut across. Now you'll feel it's a little bit thicker in the middle. You may have to dig the scissor under a little bit just to cut this section and then to the other side. And I'm going to just remove a little section just to show you something here. I have to cut back a little bit, and then I'll cut across. Again, it gets a little thicker as you get back towards the cerebellum. So again, I want to lift it up, get underneath it, and cut like that, and then I'm going to continue across. I'll cut this little square out. Okay, and then I'm pulling it out from the longitudinal fissure. So now we can see I've removed the dura mater. Just the shininess on the surface, that's the pia mater. It's right on the surface there. And actually in the sulci, you see the sulci? Between the gyrus and the gyri. There's blood vessels in there, and they're inside this pia mater. That little shiny kind of stuff that you see me peeling up, that's the pia mater. Okay, like my probe is going through the pia mater.
Is throughout the whole brain?
Yeah, it covers the entire brain. Yeah, covers the entire brain. The arachnoid matter really not going to see. It's sort of this very fine filamentous layer, and it kind of disintegrates. Now, if I remove this from right here, and then I look along this thickened area, I can see that triangular space there? Good point. Like the paparazzi? Okay, and you can see I could actually stick the probe right in there and go all the way through. Okay, and that is the superior sagittal sinus. That space, the little triangular looking space right there. Everybody see that? Okay, so that's the dural venous sinus, and this one is the superior sagittal sinus. You can kind of see, it's very small on the sheet, but this extension below it, this little flap, in humans it's much bigger. It comes down between the hemispheres. That would be the falx cerebri. Okay, falx cerebri. And there is, remember, there is blood in there, venous blood, deoxygenated blood, not CSF. Okay, and you can also kind of see, this one's ripped a little bit, but if you try to rip this dura mater, it's very difficult. I mean, I was pulling pretty hard there. I can't really rip that tissue. It's very strong. It's flimsy this way. It's not elastic, it doesn't stretch, okay, and very, very tough. That's why they call it dura mater, tough mother. Okay, so it's a good protective thing for the brain. Now, I can show you this if I continue back, and you got to be careful with this part. I would use the blunt end. This is a lot thicker. The transverse sinus and the tentorium cerebelli are a lot thicker. So I got to get in there and then sort of get underneath that tissue and give it a snip like that. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Carefully getting underneath that area, and then I'm going to snip. I probably didn't get through the whole thing yet. I'm going to have to go in that space between the cerebellum and the cerebrum. It's holding on there pretty good. I keep this scissor closed until I get in, then I can spread it. Just try to get right to the same spot I was before and snip. Okay, now when I pull that out, let's cut around a little bit more so I can get a bigger piece to show you. Removing the surface here from the cerebellum. Let's go all the way down to the brainstem here. This is the spinal cord actually, but I'm removing it from here. And, okay, I'll clean it up a little later. But I'm just going to cut that. Now I can see, did have a little cut there, that doesn't feel good. This, if I look at it this way, this was where the cerebellum would be, right? This is where the two cerebral hemispheres would be. This would be the continuation of that, okay? So the two cerebral hemispheres are here, and then, hang on, I just want to rinse my finger off, it's burning. Maybe I should put a glove on that hand. So you can really see the thickened walls of dura there between where the cerebellum is and where the hemispheres would be. Okay, so this, and I cut it a little bit tight, but this would be a thick wall coming this way, sort of a triangular shape, like a tent shape.